Hey friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome to the first ever episode of Vault of Heroes. You guys had some really positive feedback on the podcast video with Wiley last week, so I decided to make it a semi-regular thing where basically I would be bringing on a different FEHtuber in whatever interval I decide to do this thing in. I haven't decided if it's going to be weekly or semi-weekly or monthly. We'll figure it out as we go. And this time I brought along someone else to talk about Aether Raids, and that person is Penrost776, who is an AR master and has a lot to say about the game.
Hello, I'm someone else. Yes, I'm Penrost776, very excited to get a chance to talk about Fire Emblem Heroes.
Specifically Aether Raids mainly, because both of us, I think that's probably the main mode, I would say, that we play competitively.
Yep, pretty much. I do not like Arena. I play it because there are rewards, but I detest every second of it.
I completely agree. Alright, well, I've got like a small list of topics that I'd love to touch upon, so I guess we'll start off with Aether Raids. That's like the big subtopic.
Yep, the large one.
The very large one. And a lot of people have a lot to say about Aether Raids, and something that I've noticed is that people in my comments for the past few months, like, I just get people on a daily, even weekly basis who are like, hey, like, I still watch your content, but I don't play Aether Raids anymore. I've quit Aether Raids because it's not fun, it's too hard, it's just, I don't feel like I'm getting enough out of it. And that it just seems like there's a general fatigue around the mode. So, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, what IS is doing wrong?
Yeah, I think honestly the main thing that IS is building in Aether Raids is IS likes to release very strong units, just in general, and they like to then balance those very strong units by a few months later releasing a new very strong unit that counters the old very strong unit. Yeah, it means that quite often you just get stuck behind the metagame if you're not constantly doing what I do and making sure that you're able to pick up the new counter when it comes out. Because like I've looked at like saves, when those came out, you can build a near save unit and a far save unit and have them both stacked to incredibly high defensive stats. And because near save and far save, if you park them both next to each other, there are 6 spaces around them that units can just stand in and not get hit. So what you can do is you can stack those 6 spaces, or well, 4 of them because it's a Aether Raids team. You can stack 4 of those 6 spaces with just supports, whatever supports you want. You can actually build mythic units with support kits, and you can make a save block that is just more or less unbreakable by any regular unit. Like I did some calculations for it, and like when you build a block like that, units like Brave Hector don't even die to the things that are usually their hard counters in a one-on-one. And there is a unit who breaks that type of blocks. There's exactly one unit in the game.
Who is it?
It's Harmonic Ketria. Because you're literally doubling your offensive outputs of your units with her. Without her, if someone builds that kind of block and just rolls up to your defense team with it, and a lot of the players who, if you look at like the very top end of the Aether Raids scoreboards, if you run into one of those players, a lot of them have one of these teams just in their back pocket for whenever they see a team that can't kill their big units at all, right? So unless you have that very specific unit that you had to have picked up on their seasonal banner, you can't even luck into rolling one now because the banner's not out. Then you've got to do some really, like, difficult team building to even stand a chance against that sort of thing.
I've heard a lot of people complaining that they just feel like no matter what they do, no matter how hard they try, they can't build a team that consistently gets wins.
Yeah, because then, like, that's save, right? And in the other direction from save, you look at player phase teams who have units like Ninja Lin, Duo Peony, Harmonic Shida, all of these units who are getting a whole bunch of extra actions if you just let them kill your duo unit, or if you don't have a duo unit, because you might not have rolled one. If you don't have a duo unit, you do not stand a chance on Aether Raids.
And it's not just having a duo unit, it's having one who fits in well into your defense team. If you've got some random duo unit who's not doing anything other than adding the structure, that's like a dead slot too. So
yeah.
Yeah,
So you need a duo unit who's good on defense, and importantly, the third thing, a duo unit who somehow isn't getting sniped by these guys either. And if you look at how many actions they're able to pump out even before they need to start tapping those harmonic skills, duo skills, you're pretty much looking at just saves to keep your duo unit alive.
Yeah.
Because Ninja Lin can run Disarm Trap. You can't even use traps to... At the same time, you're looking at player phase teams that have some of the most, powerful offensive skills and just a whole bunch of free actions. So it's very much like squeezing you into a very narrow range of archetypes based on the specific counters that IS has released to specific units. I find it somewhat fun in the sense of I get a sense of enjoyment out of beating people who have taken a lot of orbs to the metagame and plus 10 to the fancy new unit, but then lose to me anyway.
Yeah.
But in the sense of coming into it as just a normal player, if I wasn't optimizing everything for Aether Raids the way I was, Aether Raids would be horrible.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people, that's the issue that they have. It's that most people don't optimize to that level.
Yeah,
they're not
because
willing to commit the orbs or the time or the energy.
Yeah, you want your orbs for your favorites. Or you might even just want the orbs for other modes that you prefer over Aether Raids, right?
I think I get it now. I was before you said all that, I was thinking most maps, most Aether Raids defense teams feel like they can be cleared, like you said, by double save, by a well supported save block. But I'm just thinking I guess not even everybody has a good Neo Saver and a good Far Saver and good support units, because that's not a given. You had to have spent orbs at some point specifically pulling for that. And no offense, but the base kit savers are not obviously the best. I mean, Henriette's not the greatest. Fjorm is amazing, so she's kind of the exception. And I guess Gustav's pretty good too. But other than that, you also need to have a good unit to actually give those save skills to. Mm-hmm. Either a highly merged one or just someone who's just so strong that they don't need the merges. So I get it. So a lot of people who I've seen complaining about Aether Raids offense, they complain that they just can't use the same strategies that they used to, especially the same typical just tank a team, because like you said, a lot of defense teams, especially the Catria balls, are just pumping out these insane offenses that you can't really tank unless you've got a super stacked save team.
Yeah, because if you're building a defense team, you're looking at that super stacked save team as your target of what you want to kill.
How can I beat it?
Yeah, anything that's less tough than that super stacked save team is usually just going to get shredded.
Yeah. So the common response that I've seen people, so there are a lot of people who are Aether Raids is not that bad, just use player face strategies. So I want to talk about what it is about player face strategies like Gale Force or Hit and Run. What is it about that feels so inaccessible to people that they're not really willing to step out beyond their typical just tank? Why there's so many good player face units nowadays. So why are people not embracing that strategy more?
Well, I think the answer on that half is that player face strategies just have a lot more room for error, and also just take a lot of time to get used to in the first place. If you've not played player phase before, and you try and build a player phase team, and you try and use that player phase team to player phase maps, for the first few weeks you're doing it, you probably, unless you're very good at the game, are going to spend an awful lot of ladders messing up player phase strategies, because it's very easy to mess up on player phase. Tanking doesn't have that. just moving your units into range and ending turn, most of the time, it's decided entirely by the strength of your units versus the strength of their units. You either win or lose. Player phase, you're having to make a lot of movements, a lot of like very subtle optimizations about like where you're putting units and how much health those units are on that you might not need to think about in a just end turn team. And whenever you mess that up, even slightly, it feels pretty miserable.
Yeah, like I've had that where you spend like 20-30 minutes planning out a perfect player phase clear, and then something goes wrong and it's not perfect anymore, and you mess up one little thing and that's a ladder. There's no way to recover.
So in that sense, while player phase setups are very fun for the people who like have got all the practice and like the right units and just know how to do them, when you're trying to get into player phase, it can often be a fairly forbidding task. Whereas your save units right there are, oh well, I've got the build. I've basically won the match already from the unit selection screen.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. It's like, with player phase, it's not enough to just have the units. It's not enough to have Harmonic Sheeta on a team with the, all the good player phase units. You also need to use them in a very particular way. But with the save units, you have them on the team and they're there, and they will either survive or they won't.
Yeah, the skill ceiling as far as save units go just comes as far as remembering things like, oh, my save units can't protect flyers if they're above a mountain.
Yeah.
Aside from things like that, and remembering how large 2 spaces is.
I think that's pretty easy to do.
Yeah. Aside from things like that, there's not really a lot of room to make mistakes when you're playing save. You can just do save.
So what can IS do, or can they do anything to make those player phase strategies more accessible? Because they just keep releasing all these powerful player phase units, but if people don't know how to use them or are unwilling to use them, they're just not going to.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one to answer, because honestly, I'd say that player phase units right now are actually way stronger than saves already against just the current metagame now that Harmonic Ketria exists. I've seen some really good player phase players who can clear basically any map in the game. Certain players who can first turn clear a lot of maps.
Yeah.
So it's obviously not a matter of strength. You kind of need to find a way to like make a save team that, not a save team, a player phase team that doesn't quite, it's more tolerant of mistakes without at the same time without moving the like strength level up further. Because if you move the like overall strength up, suddenly you've created a player phase team that in the hands of players who use player phase all the time is just unstoppable.
I think that might already exist, honestly, in the hands of the right people.
Oh yeah, honestly, for a long time, for instance, I was pretty sure, I did a bunch of calculations about this, that there was no way to reliably stop Layla. Because Layla just allowed so much shenanigans. Unfortunately now for Layla players who were feasting until recently, fast save does in fact completely break Layla.
Yeah.
Not for even the reason of like fast save units protect units, for the far stupider reason of if Layla hits a fast save unit, Layla does not swap after combat.
Why? Why do they do that?
Okay, so the save skills have a like line in them saying that effects that move units after combat do not trigger. This is, I'm pretty sure, intended to stop weird things happening with lunge. And
oh yeah, lunge got super nerfed once near save was introduced.
But Because I mean, if like you hit a near safe unit and lunge goes off, like what happens, right?
Yeah.
You've got 3 units in there, and you want to move one of them here and one of them there, but but like it makes sense if it's a skill that's moving the unit that's getting saved, right? But it just says skills that move units after combat.
So that includes Layla.
That includes Layla. So yeah, Layla now having a horrible time.
I haven't seen her in months, to be honest.
Yeah, well, now you know why.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. I just assumed she just fell off because of Linja or whatever.
But yeah, the other thing that now is in the meta game, Joe Peony.
Yeah.
Joe Peony just casually gives your units plus 10 attack by standing near them.
And we've all seen Fedison's clears. We all know
Yes.
how powerful that is.
Yeah, like two Joe Peonies, that's plus 20 attack. And
Not to mention the extra dance.
yeah, plus 20 attack and 4 dances between 2 of them. What's not to love, right? So yeah, honestly, I guess the advice for people looking to get into player-face strategies then who don't really know where to start is go grab a bunch of Joe Peonies. They're really good units. I still think Linja is the best as well, just for having Disarm Trap.
Yeah.
And the Brave Weapon pairs really well with Joe Peony, because what's better than getting plus 20 attack from 2 Joe Peonies? Getting it twice.
Yeah. But what about the new female Corinda? What do you think of her?
She's definitely interesting. I'm not quite super worried about her yet, because although she does kind of the same thing as Ninja Lin,
But better, I think, in some ways.
in some ways, right? But on the other hand, she's doing still pretty much the same thing, and she can't run Disarm Trap.
I think the two big differences, 3, okay, I'll say 3. The 3 big things that set her apart from Linja in a positive way are, 1, it's the cavalry movement, so you've got that 3 movement, which is more powerful than 2 movement. Although I guess there are ways around that with, like, flyer movement skills.
Yeah, it's cavalry versus flyer.
Yeah.
They're both useful, but...
And she's got the trace built into her base kit, which, like, you can give Linja trace, but 2 movement flyers, 2 movement ranged units get a lot less mileage out of it than 3 movement ones, I find. So there's that. The trace is very, very helpful. And also just the fact that she's green and she hits res, I think is such a big thing, because who is the most common far saver? Probably Brave Hector. Linja cannot break Brave Hector, at least not under normal circumstances. I've seen it time and time again, hitting for sometimes even 0 on my Brave Hector, but this new Corrin, a plus 0 Corrin with just very, very minimal attack support, just wrecks like plus 10 Brave Hectors.
Yeah. Again... Yeah, I was less worried about the Corrin because I've already fully switched to Ascendant Fjorm for far safe, but yeah, thinking about it from a Brave Hector standpoint, Brave Hector should be terrified right about now.
Yeah. And I am a Brave Hector user. I mean, I haven't used him on offense in a couple weeks, but I do have a far save Brave Hector, and he just does not, he can't, maybe with Flame, maybe, but otherwise, no, he can't take that.
Yeah, because I mean, there is... Again, the other thing I always think of as well, luckily these units have low defensive stats, is the other thing that helps them from becoming like just the strongest thing. Because so long as you can build a unit that can take 2 hits, they die on the counterattack. Or
Yeah.
they should. Unless something's gone horribly wrong.
I mean, yeah, I was just gonna say Sturdy Impact, but Cavalry can't run Sturdy Impact. As long as you can survive those first 2 hits, which, like, some units can, but some can't. Moving on to a little bit of a... I mean, it's sort of the same topic, I guess, like, similar. It's... So, we find that we've just been talking about all these units who are extremely meta, who you see all the time, or if you're not seeing them, you can probably beat the team, like, you know, Bridal Catria, Duo Sigurd, Legendary Sigurd, there's a long list. But so you keep seeing these units on defense teams, and what that does is it creates kind of a little bit of a boring experience, I would say, for the offense player. Because, like, I've had people in my comments who are like, I just ran into my 7th legendary Sigurd this week. I'm like, is that really the kind of meta that we want to be building in Aether Raids? Is it like undesirable? Is there something that IS should do to fix that, or try and incentivize people to use other units, or is it just something that, like, it's just inevitable?
Well, I think there's a kind of a toss-up, because it is one kind of inevitable just by the nature of how people follow metagames, right? There's been a few times actually in Fire Emblem Heroes I've noticed that like a new unit has come out and honestly haven't been all that great, but because there's this hype around them being great, for the first few weeks until everyone figures that out themselves, you see them everywhere anyway. Like, the biggest example I think of that was Altina. Altina at launch, everyone was going, oh wow, this new mythic completely breaks the game. Brave Weapon and Vantage?
And look at her now.
Yeah. Dies to Fraseer, even.
Yeah.
But when she came out, it was Altina's everywhere, because people heard the hype, and they thought, aha, this is the new metagame. And it wasn't, but because people heard it was, that's where the metagame went for like a week, 2 weeks.
That sort of reminds me of Fallen Edelgard too. I don't know if you remember, but like her first few weeks, she was on every defense team, or like almost every defense team. Like people just sticking her there, like even if she wasn't supposed to be there, like she was just there.
Yeah, I almost exactly what I did, in fact, because Dark Season, until Note came out, I'd been running a very funny team, a double dagger trap, using rallies on dagger to pull them in front of my team to do silly things. And then Note comes out, I upgrade to Note, now I have a 7th unit slot. What do I do with that, right? Well, I've got this Fatal Guard.
Fallen Edelgard.
Yeah, let's just build the exact same team and park Fatal Guard in her garage on the other side of the map.
Did it work?
It worked. It shouldn't have worked, but it did.
Yeah, I remember, like, honestly, Fallen Edelgard is still definitely a concern overall if you don't have a unit to deal with her, but I remember in those first few weeks, it was just so bad for so many people, because most people, including myself, just didn't have a dedicated Fallen Edelgard counter, so we underestimated her bulkiness, her, like, Mystic Boost 8 or whatever it is when you stack it with the seal, and you just can't kill her. But eventually everyone adjusted, people stopped running her as much because of that, and yeah, now you don't see her that often anymore.
Yeah, I personally am very lucky, because I have since forever been running Picnic Flora. And Picnic Flora somehow, as if by magic, manages to counter every new change in the metagame.
Really?
It keeps, well, not necessarily every. She couldn't keep up with Brave Hector, but you can run another unit to kill Brave Hector. But like, originally I used her back during the Brave Ike metagame. And then they released Fallen Edelgard, and guess what? Picnic Flora has beast effective damage. Love it, even the ones who are running Sphalen Shield to get around armor effective damage can do nothing against me.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad she's actually useful, because I don't think like anyone aside from you uses her.
Yeah. In any case, to answer the question about the metagame, honestly I think for one thing IS could do at least to try and shift that more in the direction of using the units you want is to kind of move the power of units off of their PRFs so much and onto stuff that's inheritable. And honestly I think, because then if everything's inheritable, you start to run into issues of like, well, what's making these units unique? Like, I think start making some more like interesting inheritance conditions for things.
Oh, like specific class, like, or weapon type or movement type
or
stuff?
That, or like the one thing I was looking at, because a lot of people are saying about refines as well. some of the units that were Gen 1 and got refined really early, refines were fine when they came out. Now they look kind of sad. People are like, well...
Very sad.
Are they going to get a second refine? But one of the things I was thinking was, well, and admittedly this is kind of like a pipe dream, this is not necessarily something that IS would or even should necessarily actually do, but what if you have certain, like, skills, kind of like seals, that are only usable by units that are older than a certain, like, generation?
I see. So like how the dragon flowers go by generation, but that way for skills.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like, I think if you put just some really powerful inheritable skills into a slot like that, then suddenly really old units who at the moment have basically no purpose aside from, well, they're my favourite, they suddenly have a new niche because of what's coming out for them.
I really like that idea, and I wonder, now I'm a little upset because I wonder if Ascendant Florets would have been a way to play around with that idea. Or just like in general, like some kind of buff, but only to older units.
Yeah.
Interesting. I hadn't even considered that. But I don't think IS will do it.
Yeah. I think IS will continue doing what makes them money.
Yeah, I mean, but a lot of people, I mean, you know, it's still, the game's still making the money, but a lot of people are just very dissatisfied with the state of the game. But I guess if they're still pulling on the gacha, that's what matters.
Good enough, right?
So are there any, like, final general thoughts that you have about Aether Raids that you want to share?
Well, the other thing I'm kind of sad about is that Ascendant Fjord means that Kempf is no longer the answer to everything.
Aww. Even the flash doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Kempf used to be my secret best unit in the game. Because literally, like, only a very few units actually can run NC Disrupt and not, like, severely harm their build by doing that. So the list of things you have to be worried about with NC Disrupt is very small. And if you can run Kempf, and you can run a unit that kills those units that have NC Disrupt, and you can overlap them, then you basically have a defense that's solved against end turn. Except now, Ascendant Fjorm pretty much throws that all out the window.
Yeah. And I guess she's common enough that you do have to account for her in that way.
Yeah, because a lot of people sparked for her as well. Because of her fly.
Which is a good choice if you're like, especially like if you needed a fire saver. She's a very good one right out of the box.
But I mean, a lot of people as well just went for the Floret, didn't even think about, like, Fjorm as a unit, and then afterwards found out, wait, she's actually really good.
Actually, speaking of Null Disrupt, do you know how they did Legendary Violet's Drive Null follow-up? You think they'll ever do something like that with Null Disrupt?
I sure hope not.
It's like, imagine you bait all these people. When I first saw the Fjorm banner, my instant thought was bait. So you make all these people pull for Fjorm. You sell it with a shiny flower, Null Disrupt armor, and then like next month's legendary is like Drive Null Disrupt or something. I don't know. It could happen.
Yeah, I sincerely hope that IS doesn't touch NC Disrupt any more than they already have, because it is one of the few things that kind of makes certain teams reliably beatable. Because at the very least, melee armors still can't run it. So melee wind sweep to kill save balls is just about a viable strategy. Brave Arm. Brave Arm kills everything. But whenever they take things away from that, because the other important thing about the Null Disrupt thing is that for a lot of people trying to beat safe balls, etc., preventing counterattacks was the cheapest way in terms of, like, the actual skills you need to pick up of winning those fights. A lot of units who you'd pick up for that, you'd literally just inherit wind sweep on them, and, well, at the very least, you're not going to die to the counterattack your entire team, right?
But then if they do drive Null C, that's off the table.
that's completely off the table. Yeah.
Because like you said, if you're already pretty much like flash units like that, range units like that, it's just there's no use anymore because
Fjorm has just completely wiped out ranged flash or ranged fire sweep.
But
it's all got to be melee
for
now.
melees too.
Yeah, if they do it to melees too, then woo buddy. People are going to have to spend a whole lot more orbs suddenly to beat that.
Well, maybe that's... I don't know. I honestly, like, ever since, like, Legendary Sigurd and Fallen Edelgard, I'm asking myself, like, does IS know what they have unleashed upon this game? Was it on purpose? Was it an accident? What do you think? Do you think, like, Legendary Sigurd, do you think they foresaw what the combination of, like, Legendary Sigurd plus Pathfinder plus, like, everything else, you think they foresaw that would happen?
You know, I don't think they did. Because... well, particularly in that combination, I remember, again, this is always something interesting to compare, like, the first days of a banner coming out versus, like, immediately after it's come out and everyone's suddenly using the unit. When the trailer came out, a lot of people were saying, well, he's kind of interesting, but, like, what? He's not really doing anything more than, like, we've already got turn 1 force, right? What's a slightly different turn 1 force going to do?
Oh boy. And then we realized.
Yeah. Because, yeah, just looking at the kit before knowing exactly what it was capable of, it didn't look much more scary than what was available through, say, Annette or Legendary Azura. Slightly more scary because it applies to the whole team, but, like, if you think there's only, like, really 2 or 3 units that you're really caring about moving a super long distance, right? So, like, it's slightly better than that. No, it's way better than that.
Yeah, it's so much better. So you think it was just the issue of IS, like, just like us, we initially didn't realize, they didn't realize either, and then it's just like a mistake.
Yeah, well, I think at the very least, IS probably knew it was strong. They didn't realize it was quite that strong.
I think it would have been so much less strong if they just didn't make it the low cooldown that it is. Imagine if it had 1 extra cooldown.
Yeah,
you can't suddenly run Quick and Pulse.
Yeah, Quick and Pulse. Remove that off the table. Suddenly, like, you've got a unit that's almost fair and balanced.
Yeah, I think that might actually be fair and balanced. Because you could run guard then to get around.
You can run guard, and then you can just tank Legendary Sigurd himself.
Yeah.
Or, this is also the other funny thing, it then allows you very silly setups using Quicken Pulse and Ostia's Pulse.
Yeah, but that locks you into using Hector or, like, Grand Scratcher, but, like, it's a lot harder.
Yeah, if you're
than
locked
just
into using those
units,
then honestly, great. Let them have their time to shine, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that he just does everything he needs to do by himself.
On his own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, my point, coming back to that, was like, does IS care that much about balancing the meta? I don't know. I think it's just coming back to what we said near the beginning of, like, they give us one new strong thing so that they can then sell us the next one a few months later who counters that, and then it's like it's just a cycle.
Yeah, I think they do care about balancing it, but their idea of balancing it has always been, well, we'll make something new to solve whatever the current issue is.
And make it accessible via orbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the core problem with Aether Raids, and that's exactly what we were talking about at the beginning too. It's just... And you know what? Sometimes they make good steps, like giving us young Innis for free. That was an amazing decision. He's probably one of the best free-to-play units, but those decisions to give us that kind of stuff are very rare, and it's just not meaningful enough.
Yeah, those decisions, I think, mostly come out when there's something that's very close to actually breaking the metagame.
Are you talking about Fallen Edelgard right now with Innis?
Full Nailguard, but just also damage reduction in general at that point was, like, there's a lot of ways to stack it, and once you've stacked enough, there's nothing you can do about it. Unless you have Deadeye, which, I mean, did you roll for Shinon? No. You rolled a bunch of him anyway, but you didn't roll for him.
No.
But in cases where, because they're very happy to let something almost break the metagame, because so long as there are answers to it that you can pick up, even if those answers take a little bit of work to build, then they're like, well, that's okay. They can build that. When it is just a, well, how do we deal with this? We don't sort of situation. That's when IS goes, well, I guess we need to give them something, right?
That makes sense. And it sounds so scummy when you put it that way, but it makes a lot of sense. Are you sure you don't work for IS?
Oh, I wish they let me work for IS.
Well, yeah, I mean, any last words? I feel like we've been talking for a while at this point.
Oh, I could go on last words for ages. Add more Thracia units, please. Thank you.
You mean another Reinhardt ult? Yes, please. I'll take that.
I loved the long period of time when IS just treated Reinhardt better than Leaf.
Yes.
The actual lord of the game.
What do you mean? Reinhardt's the lord of the game. Well, thank you so much for lending your time and your expertise. I think this was a very interesting discussion.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, so everybody, I already said this in my Aether Raids video with Penrost, but please do go check out their channel. If you want to see funny ARD replays, or just in general funny showcases, if you want to see multiple flames used on the same map, I recommend you check out their channel.
Yep. And everyone who's here for me, you probably already know who Promise is, but...
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for listening, and let me know in the comments if you would love to see more of this kind of content, because honestly, I just love talking about FEH, so I'd love to have more people on. Let me know like if there are specific people you'd like to see on, and I will definitely reach out to them. And thank you all for listening. Bye. You can say bye as well if you want.
Oh yeah, bye.